Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today, despite some of the technical difficulties that we had for this important conversation about dementia and air travel. My name's Allie, and joining me today is my colleague and friend, Valentina. We're so glad you're here, whether you're someone living with dementia, a family member, a care partner, someone working in the travel industry, or a researcher.
Thank you, Allie. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And today we're here because we want to explore both what's working and what still needs to be improved in the air travel industry. So over the next 40 minutes, we'll be discussing the challenges and opportunities in making air travel accessible for people living with dementia and travel companions. And we'll talk about practical strategies that can help. So first, I would like to start by introducing the team behind this work. So we are a group of 5 researchers at the University of Ottawa Life Research Institute. And what makes us a really unique team is that we bring together different perspectives. And so myself and Dr. Michael Mulvey come from the business world, while Ali, Linda Garcia, and Annie Robital bring expertise from health and science. And so really this interdisciplinary approach helps us tackle accessible travel from all different angles. We're all happy to answer questions and or continue conversations after today. So this is why all our email are here on the screen for ease of references. And so we're going to start by looking at some headlines. So we've been following the news stories about travel and disability. And so if we look at the screen, if you look at the range of these headlines, we see that airports are focusing on more inclusive journeys, but also Disney's emphasizing their accessibility services, and even the sunflower lanyards for hidden disabilities. So these real news stories show that travel challenges for people living with disabilities happen all over the world and not just in one place or for one condition. And so from air travel to vacation destinations to everyday wayfinding tools. These remind us how important it is to make travel fair and accessible for everyone. We need to travel policies and services that meet the needs of people living with disabilities and make every journey more inclusive and welcoming.
So let's start with a fundamental question. Who is traveling? So there's a growing number of travelers who are living with dementia. And here's what's really important to understand is that people living with dementia don't typically travel alone. They travel with family members, friends, or care partners, and this makes companions an essential part of these journeys. Older adults are living longer, staying active, and exploring more. And the number of people living with dementia is increasing, and many still want to travel. We travel together, so as I mentioned, journeys often include our family, our friends, and care partners, and companions play a really important role in comfort, navigation, and safety. And yes, travel is possible for people living with dementia. With good planning, flexibility, and support, travel can be enjoyable and meaningful for everyone. Airports and airlines are starting to create more dementia-friendly programs. This isn't really about whether travel is possible, because it absolutely is. This is about how we can make it better, safer, and more accessible for everyone involved. We know that dementia affects everyone differently, and travel needs will vary from person to person. But with the right support, planning, and understanding, meaningful travel experiences are achievable. So why does travel matter? Why are we having this conversation? So travel isn't just about getting from point A to point B. It's about quality of life, connection, and maintaining independence for as long as possible. First, travel enhances our overall quality of life. It gives us something to look forward to, creates cherished memories, and can genuinely improve mood and well-being. For people living with dementia, positive experiences like travel can have profound effects on daily life. Travel also fights loneliness. It creates opportunities for social connections, whether that's visiting family, attending important events, or simply being out in the world with others. Social isolation is a risk for older adults, including people living with dementia, and travel can be a powerful tool against it. Beyond that, travel keeps the mind sharp. New environments, different stimulation, navigating airports, and meeting new people. All of this provides cognitive engagement and a sense of purpose. It reminds us that life continues and that we're still active participants in the world. And perhaps most importantly, being out and about supports independence. It reinforces the feeling of being in control of your own life, of making choices, of continuing to do things that matter. That sense of agency is crucial for everyone, and especially for people living with dementia who may feel loss of control in other areas of life.
And so what we learned so far is that there are three key themes that emerge from the experiences of travelers themselves. And so if you felt these challenges, you are not alone, and there are strategies that can actually help, okay? So we start with the first theme, which is traveling together. And so as Ali was mentioning, traveling is a team effort. And so this really cannot be overstated because successful in air travel often involves coordination between the person living with dementia, their travel companions, airline staff, airport personnel, and sometimes medical professionals. So everyone plays a role. So what this means in practice is be prepared for things to not go perfectly, but most situations do settle down. And so you and your companion work together, adjusting, stay calm, and supporting each other when plans change. So some helpful reminder could be to stay flexible and be patient, take breaks when needed, and use kindness when things do not go as planned. These little things can really make a big difference. Moving on to the second theme is about handling travel challenges. As we all know, airport can be very noisy, confusing, and overwhelming, frankly, for everyone. So the bright lights, the crowds, the announcement, the time pressures, it is a lot to process. And so here what helps, really expecting a few bumps along the way, again, for everyone, not only for people living with dementia and their travel companion. And so again, flexibility and patience aren't just nice to have in this case, they are essentials, right? So what this means is that sometimes travel might not go as smoothly. There might be delays, there might be confusing instructions or busy crowds. And so adapting to the moment makes things easier. And so some helpful reminders could be to allow some extra time and take things step by step. So also might help to bring familiar items such as music, snacks, or photos. And once again, let staff know if you need help or a quieter space. And so do not hesitate to ask. Remember, it is a team effort. So don't forget about the airlines and airport personnel. And finally, the third theme is learning and sharing together, which can make really a huge difference. And so when people connect with others who understand, whether through webinars like we're doing today, or online communities, through local Alzheimer's support groups or dementia-friendly organizations, they gain really practical advice, emotional support, and also the confidence to plan their trips. So no one should really have to figure this out alone. So what this means is that talking with others who understand, so either online or in local groups, can really help you prepare, feel supported, and share ideas. Some helpful reminders: join dementia-friendly travel or caregiver groups. Ask questions and also share your own travel trips. Because remember, your experience can help others and lead to greater awareness. Which gets me to my next slide, which I wanted to pause and really hear and listen to some real voices from people who have navigated air travel living with dementia. And so as you can see on the screen, these quotes and ideas come from people living with dementia and care partners who've shared what it really feels and look like to fly. And so their experiences remind us that it is okay when things are imperfect. What matters most is patience, flexibility, and connection. And so as we can see on the green bubble on the top left, one person said, Be prepared for things to not go perfectly, but when cabin lights are dimmed and everyone else is sleeping, she probably will settle down too. And so this message really speaks to the theme of expecting bumps along the way, but also recognize that strategies exist. And so like taking advantage of quieter moments during their flight can really make a big differences. And we'll look at other strategies throughout this presentation today. Another traveler in the blue bubble on the top right share how valuable community support is. They say, urge your in-laws to connect with Alzheimer's groups in their area. Sharing experiences and getting advice from others who've been there can be a lifesaver. And so this is the power of learning together that we just discussed. So this is about proactive communication with flight staff. Something we'll return to it later as well. So again, when staff understand what is happening, they can really help you serve better and provide better services and then better support you. Someone else described how they travel as a team on the bottom left in the purple bubble. And they say, I usually introduce herself and briefly explain the issue that John has a cognitive dementia issue and will not remember to stay put. Simply, direct communication with staff makes a big difference. And finally, one care partner expressed the relief of having support. And so in the yellow bubble, they say, thank you so much for your response. Yes, I feel much more at peace about flying with him instead of relying on airport assistant. Grateful for this community. That sense of not being alone, that's what connection provides. And so these aren't just strategies on papers. These are real people, real flight, and real experiences. And they show us that air travel, living with dementia can be challenging, yes, but absolutely possible, as Ali mentioned, with the right preparation and the right support.
Now let's talk about the challenges that people living with dementia face when it comes to air travel. And so the first major challenge is too little information and clarity. Many travelers simply don't know what services are available, how to request them, or what accommodations they can expect. Information might be scattered across different websites, buried in fine print, or not provided in accessible formats. Airport signage and announcements can be confusing or hard to follow. Assistance options are not well publicized and remain inconsistent at different airports, and oftentimes online resources are not dementia friendly. The second challenge is uneven awareness and support. You might have a wonderful experience at one airport with staff who are knowledgeable and helpful, and then either encounter confusion or lack of understanding at another. And so this inconsistency creates anxiety and makes it really difficult to know what to expect when you're traveling. Staff training on dementia is inconsistent, but it is expanding and it's pretty hopeful. We've spoken to different airports and a lot of them have dementia on the radar and are trying to work with organizations. Some airports even offer dementia friends or sunflower lanyard programs, but as I mentioned, they're not available everywhere, so you can usually find that information online. The rushed security and boarding processes can increase stress and confusion, and security has actually been considered one of the most difficult parts of the air travel journey. And then third, there's a challenge of stigma and disclosure concerns. Many people living with dementia worry about how they'll be treated if they disclose their diagnosis. Will they be treated differently? Will it create problems? Will they face discrimination? These fears can prevent people from asking for help that they actually need. Travelers may hide their diagnosis to avoid unfair judgment, fear of misunderstanding, or losing independence. And there's this need for more compassionate and informed interactions that respect dignity at the airports and through airlines. And so we've talked a lot about airports and airlines. So I thought it was also important to understand the challenges from their perspective, because solving this problem requires understanding on both sides. And so airlines and airports face challenges around staff training. How do you train thousands of employees to recognize and respond appropriately to hidden disabilities like dementia? And how do you ensure that the training is sustained over time as the staff turnover? There's also a need for standardized processes. Right now, processes vary widely between airports, airlines, and even between different staff members. And so creating consistency is complicated, but absolutely necessary to improve the airport experience. And data collection and sharing is another challenge. How do we gather information about what's working and what isn't while also respecting privacy of passengers? Oftentimes, the information you share with your airline is not shared with the airports, so it may leave passengers having to express their needs or share feedback to multiple different people throughout their journey. And finally, there are questions about language and design. How do we communicate about these services in a way that's clear and respectful? How do we design spaces and processes that work for people experiencing cognitive changes? We found that dementia-friendly travel experiences are still a relatively new topic. Although airports often offer services addressed to people living with disabilities, they're not specifically related to people living with dementia. In addition to that, these initiatives are not consistent across all of the different airports. We found that ground transportation services, feedback and complaints, and wheelchair services were among the most frequent offerings on airport websites. We believe this trend is related to the mandates from the Canadian government. So all three of those services are mandated by the Canadian government. And although most airports described the services mainly with text, we did occasionally see some great visuals, which were beneficial in identifying the services that were available. And the visuals already give you a sense of what to expect as support. So we recognize that it also helps us understand the nature of the services that are offered. There was also a really large varying use of language across the different airport websites, as you can see on the right side of the screen. And so it really shows that there's this lack of standardization in terminology related to accessibility. And so this variability can sometimes lead to confusion or inconsistencies in understanding the scope of the available services for individuals living with dementia or other disabilities. A question that guided our reflection when we were doing this research is, do people living with dementia see themselves as having a disability? And really, not everyone living with dementia identifies with the word disability. Some may think of dementia simply as a new part of life rather than a disability itself. However, regardless of how someone describes their experience, it's really important that airports offer clear communication, supportive staff, and accessible services because everyone deserves a comfortable and confident travel experience.
And so despite these challenges, there are many positive initiatives already in place. And so let's look at what's currently available. And so starting from the left here on the screen, in terms of planning and information, many airports and airlines now offer the escort or meet and greet services. Basically, when airline staff meet you at the airport entrance and guide you through the check-in, security, and to your gate. There are terminal maps, which are visual guides showing airport layouts, gate locations, restrooms, and amenities to help you with the navigation and wayfinding. Travel applications, they're mobile apps that provide real-time flight updates, gate information, and airport navigation assistance. Also, the TTY services, so the text telephone services for passengers who are living with hearing impairments, and they help them communicate with airline staff. And then finally, specifically to Canada, so only domestically, we have the one person, one fare, which is a policy allowing a required support person to fly free or at a reduced cost with the passenger who needs assistance. Moving on to the second box for identification and assistance, we're seeing the growth of programs. And so we're starting with the Hidden Disability Sunflower Lanyard that Ali was mentioning. And so it's a discrete green lanyard with sunflowers on it that signal that you might need extra help. You might need to be patient as a customer or as a staff, or you might need some extra help and support. There are accessibility request forms, usually pre-travel forms, to notify airlines of specific needs so they can prepare appropriate support. Wheelchair and mobility support, which are wheelchair and staff assistant for getting through the airport and boarding the plane. And finally, service animals, which are services that support trained animals allowed to travel with passengers to provide emotional or physical support during travel. In terms of environment and accessibility, some airports now have quiet rooms or quiet spaces, which are calm, low stimulation spaces away from the crowds where passengers can rest and decompress. Accessible washroom, which they have been seen as very, very important. And they're larger unisex family restrooms with usually grab bars, wider doors, and space for mobility aids or assistance. Clear signage, a large, easy to read sign with symbols and contrasting colors to help with wayfinding. And finally, curbside and in-terminal shuttles, which are transportation services or assistance from parking drop-off areas to the terminals to help reduce that walking distance throughout the airport. And finally, we look at staff and special programs, which include, as Ali was mentioning, the accessibility training for staff. And so it's employee education on recognizing and supporting passengers living with various disability, including dementia. Therapy dogs, trained comfort animals stations in airports to reduce the stress and anxiety for travelers. Feedback and complaint, as Ali mentioned as well, which are dedicated channels for passengers to report issues or suggest improvements to accessibility services. And finally, the CATSA Blue Shirt volunteers. There are volunteers who provide friendly assistance with security screening and navigation. And there have been very, very positive in the experiences of people living with disabilities. And so this service exists. And so currently, the challenge is actually making sure that people know about them and can access them consistently. And so the next discussion that we're going to go through it's after we talked about all these themes and the services that exist, let's look at the actual journey itself. And so air travel isn't just one experience. It's really a series of stages, each with its own challenges and also opportunities for support. And so we start the journey with planning. So before you leave your home, and this is where you research accessibility services, contact the airline or the airport, and prepare for what's ahead. Next come the check-in and customer service. And so it's the arrival at the airport, checking the bags, and connecting with staff who can help you navigate the day and the journey. Then we have the departure. And so it's moving through the terminal, finding your gate, and preparing to board. Security and post-security, as Ali mentioned, is often one of the most stressful part of the journey. And so this is where the crowds, the noise, the procedures can be really overwhelming, but it's also where many of those services we just discussed, like quiet rooms and assistant programs, becomes really essential. And finally, we have the arrivals. And so when you arrive at your destination, you collect your bag, and sometimes you have to meet that next connections. And so if you look at this slide, you notice there's some red arrows, right? So that's a reminder that travel doesn't always move in a straight line. And so you might need to loop back for assistance. You might need to revisit information or adapt your plans. And so that's completely normal. And that's why when we talked a lot about flexibility, that's why flexibility and patience really matters. And so also from these errors, we wanted to highlight the most important difficult aspects of the journey from what we learned. So the pre-planning, very, very, very important to do your research and plan ahead. And also the security as one of the most difficult and challenges. And so again, very important to have that support to make sure that you plan that quiet room after you go through security. And so in the next section, Ali will walk you through each of these stages and share specific strategies for making each one smoother.
So this slide is really the heart of the practical guidance we wanted to share today. And so we'll talk about how you can actually plan for air travel. So we'll start with that pre-planning phase. And so you can consider checking in with your doctor or a health professional before you travel because they can help you prepare by offering advice, making sure your travel plans are safe for you, and helping with things like medication or travel documents if they're needed. And it's important to note that this is completely your choice. It's not mandatory to go see a doctor before you travel, but some people do find it reassuring and helpful. You can also choose your flights strategically. Direct flights when possible because it can minimize the connections or potential confusion. And daytime flights are often better because they align with our natural alertness patterns. So it's not kind of changing your daily routine. It's important to request assistance early. You want to try not to wait until you get to the airport because most airlines want 48 to 72 hours notice for special assistance requests. So if you have time and are able to, you can call ahead or book your assistance while you're booking your flight. Prepare a travel pack. So this could include all of your medications with clear labels, a summary of medical information, your complete itinerary, and emergency contact numbers. Keep this with you at all times. It's not recommended to ever check this information and these items in your luggage. You'd want to bring it on a carry-on item, whether that be a personal item or something you're carrying on. And as Val mentioned, the one person, one fare. So you can look into these policies if you're traveling with a companion who's providing necessary support. Many domestic airlines allow a support person to travel in Canada at no additional cost or a reduced rate for the support person's flight. And so some tips for navigating the airport and the flight. We've mentioned this a few times, but arriving early and giving yourself extra time at the airport because it can reduce stress and allow you more time to move at your own pace, and it'll make the travel experience a bit more relaxed. It also would allow you to factor in if you do have any bumps in your journey that you have that extra time, and it reduces those stress levels. Look for those quiet and sensory-friendly areas if you need a break. More and more airports are creating these spaces specifically for people who find the main terminal a little bit overwhelming. Consider using visible identifiers like that hidden disability sunflower lanyard. This signals to staff and also other passengers that you may need additional patience or support without requiring you to have to explain your situation. And keep things simple. Stick to one carry-on bag if you can. Of course, that might not be possible if you're going on a long trip. Use clear labels on everything and print your boarding passes as a backup instead of just relying on your mobile devices. And I think the most important tip is ask for help when you need it. The airport and airline staff genuinely do want to help, and they can't help you if they don't know what you need. And you might not know exactly what you need until you're at the airport, and that's okay. Reaching out for help in the moment can make your travel less stressful. And some important considerations we wanted to share, staying hydrated and stretching regularly when possible. This helps your body and mind feel their best when you are traveling because we know how long those travel days can be. Pack some comfort items, some familiar snacks, noise-canceling headphones, a favorite photo or activity. I recently spoke to someone who said he likes to play solitaire during his travels. So whatever might provide that reassurance or distraction while you're at the airport or on your flight. Plan for fatigue. Travel is exhausting for anybody, so schedule rest time after you arrive and don't pack your schedule too tightly. Remember that companions play a crucial role. They can help handle documents, help with navigation in busy areas. They can provide reassurance and advocate if needed. And finally, keep in mind that every journey is different. What might work one time for you might not work the next. It could vary depending on the airline or the airport. So it's really important to be flexible. And some key messages, and we just kind of wanted to summarize what we want you to take away from this presentation. You can travel with the right support. Dementia does not mean you have to stop traveling. Many people living with dementia continue to fly safely and enjoyably when they plan ahead and have the right support in place. Travel can bring joy, whether that's reconnecting with family, creating new memories, and keeping a sense of independence. It's really about preparation and not so much the limitations. So the key is to plan early, allow extra time, and know what supports are available so you can travel with confidence. And we're really hitting this one home, but planning early can make the biggest difference. When you book your flight, tell the airline or airport about your needs. You can ask for assistance services, request priority boarding, or wear that visible identifier like a lanyard. Try to choose direct flights or traveling during the day when you'll feel more alert. And don't forget to share your travel plans with your family, your friends, or your doctor, just so everyone's on the same page and can provide support if needed. Airports can be busy, noisy, and fast-paced, and that can be tiring for anybody. It's easy to feel disoriented with the bright lights, the many people walking around, and the announcements happening all at once. A few small strategies can help, like taking breaks in those quiet spaces, using a simple printed itinerary, and following the color-coded signs and maps. And don't hesitate to ask staff for help because that's what they're there for. Sometimes a calm voice or a clear direction can really make all the difference. Traveling with a familiar companion can make the journey feel more comfortable and less stressful. A companion can offer gentle reminders about what's happening next, help with the timing and organization, those logistical pieces of your travel, and provide reassurance if any plans change. Having a trusted person nearby can make it easier to stay oriented, communicate with staff, and enjoy the experience together. The good news is more airports and airlines are training staff to understand invisible disabilities, including dementia, but that training is not available everywhere yet, so you might notice differences from one airport to another. Wearing that lanyard can help staff know you might need a bit more time or clear instructions. And just keep in mind you have the right to respectful, patient, and accessible services, just like any other traveler. Comfort really matters when you travel, as most of us probably know. So try to stay hydrated and stretch your legs during the flight. As we mentioned a few times, keep that medication in your carry-on your person, just because we know you hear these horror stories of luggage getting lost, and it's important to have those your medications, or if you have a medical condition or a mobility concern, you could even ask your doctor for a short letter that explains any special needs that you have. And if possible, avoid sedatives, just because staying alert helps keep you oriented during the journey. Even small environmental and design changes can make a big difference. And so you might be surprised at how those small things can have a big impact on your journey. Things like clear signage, good lighting, or having enough seating. Some airports now offer quiet rooms or calm boarding areas, and even programs that will let you visit the airport in advance to get familiar with the airport. So those would be things you'd be able to find on specific airport websites in the accessibility section on their websites. And try to bring your routine into your travel day. So you can bring your favorite snack, you can keep your usual meal times, bring some of your favorite music, and continue chatting about what's next in the journey. Because as Val mentioned, it's kind of a bunch of little stages along a big journey. All of those things can help keep you comfortable and grounded. And advocacy is creating change. Change is happening because people like you are speaking up. Travelers and families who share their experiences, both positive or negative, are helping airports and airlines understand what's really needed. Every bit of feedback helps shape more dementia-friendly travel policies. So even if your journey does have some bumps along the way, remember that your voice is powerful and it's helping make travel more accessible for everybody. Our research team was able to identify some key areas for improvement by speaking with stakeholders and those with lived experience. All of the stakeholders came to the realization that a person-centered approach was needed. They all realized that dementia needed to be viewed along a continuum, and the whole person rather than just the health condition needed to be considered. In other words, solutions needed to be diverse and tailored to people's needs. The focus was really on making changes, increasing awareness, rethinking disclosure, and providing reasonable accommodations. These are crucial for improving the travel experience for individuals living with dementia and their travel companions. And so some of the key messages from service providers, they recognize the importance of involving travelers and their travel companions in the decision-making process. What do travelers living with dementia need to know, and how can that information be made available to them? They question the necessity of disclosing the diagnosis and the importance for the industry to know what the passengers really needed. And most importantly, they highlighted the importance of collaboration. They stressed the need for universal collaboration and standardization, including people with both visible and non-visible limitations. And this helped inform the next phase of our work. So we'll share some specific recommendations from different stakeholders. For information and awareness on the left of the screen, we need to shift from asking, what do we think passengers need, to what do passengers actually want and need? Make this information available from the very start of the travel planning process, not buried on page 47 of a website. For disclosure and identification, focus on needs and not the diagnosis. Some people might need extra time, a quieter space, or patient communication, and that's what really matters, not that specific medical label. For spaces and accommodations, accommodation does not have to be difficult or expensive. Simple things like making a quieter space in the airport, improving the signage so it's clearer with contrasting colors, or having a designated staff member at difficult parts of the journey can make an enormous difference. And remember to accommodate throughout the entire journey, not just at the security, but from parking to the gate and then to landing at your destination. For formal training, it's not enough to train staff once. It's important to check over time if the training is lasting and if staff continue to use what they've learned to support passengers. Training should also include how to handle medical emergencies and should involve partnerships with dementia organizations, which is really great because some of the Canadian airports are partnering with dementia organizations, so that's great news. And then finally, for standardization, we need standardization, ideally globally, but we also need to carefully define what's being standardized and who's responsible for what. So this is really between those airports and airlines, it's hard for passengers to know who to go to for what information. And critically, we need feedback from passengers with non-visible limitations about their actual needs, not just based on assumptions that we think is what they need.
And so I was starting to wrapping up this webinar based on our finding. There are some implication for both people living with dementia and airports. And so starting for people living with dementia, before starting your journey, take time to research and plan ahead. So look for airports and airlines that offer personalized assistance to meet your needs. Next, communicate these needs, right? So make sure you communicate with the airport and the airline staff. This really helps them to support you better throughout your entire journey. As Ali just mentioned, your feedback is really, really important for airports to understand the challenges faced by travelers living with dementia, and also to improve their services. I should say airport and airlines and all service providers. So share your experiences with both airport and airlines to help them improve their services. Also, consider joining community organizations that work with airports. So Ali just mentioned a lot of dementia organizations are working with airports and airlines in Canada, which was really, really great to see. Finally, using airport support services such as priority security lanes, quiet areas, curbside assistance, and meet and greet services can greatly improve your travel experience. And so even if you don't initially think you need these services, as we've mentioned, you might arrive at the airport and you might actually need extra support. And so really this assistance and services are designed to cater to diverse needs and to ensure a smoother journey from the start to finish. And so specifically for airport, because that's the stakeholder group that we have talked to, We've seen that dementia remains overlooked in many accessibility initiatives, and most programs focus on mobility, disabilities, or sensory impairments, while cognitive disability is still receiving less attention. And so, remarkably, we have seen that none of the initiatives, they were actually targeted towards passengers living with dementia. And so, while recognizing potential overlapping needs, so as Ali was mentioning, focusing on the needs rather than the diagnosis, we suggest that airports should actively promote these initiatives to reach a broader audience. Next, there is a critical need for community engagement, specifically with passengers living with dementia. And so include them in planning and decision making. Nothing about us without us. On a positive note, there's a growing momentum towards a wide range of services, especially in Canada. Canada has been one of the most proactive countries worldwide, especially with the Canadian Accessibility Act. And so more and more organizations are recognizing these needs and really taking actions. And lastly, there is a call for collaboration. We need coordinated efforts for broad-based support. So Ali was mentioning standards. We need to collaborate to make this happen. And so finally, here's where everyone in our audience today can make a difference. Share your experience. And so every travel story matters. We have seen some stories today. So your experiences can really help airport and airlines understand what works and what doesn't. Whether the trip went smoothly or you had challenges, your feedback helps build better system for everyone. So share your experiences, whether through formal feedback channels, online communities, or conversation with travel providers. Your stories matter. So if you have a good experience, share what worked. When you had some difficulty experience, you can explain what went wrong. Participate in research. So there's very little research on dementia and air travel, and your voice can really help fill that gap. So join ongoing studies or share your experiences to help researchers like us design safer and more inclusive travel. Speak up and advocate. Many airport and airlines are beginning, as we have seen, to work with dementia and older adult community organizations to really improve accessibility. And so this partnership lead to better staff training, awareness campaign, and advisory group that include people with the lived experience. And so when travelers and companions share their experiences, the decisions reflect real needs and not just assumptions, just like Ali just mentioned. And so remember that change happens when people make their voices heard. And finally, support and inspire others. So if you have successfully navigated air travel living with dementia, share your knowledge. If you're a family member, connect with others in similar situations. So build that community of support. And I find that this is a beautiful community to be part of. So I'm very, very glad that we're doing this today. And so again, encourage others to living with dementia to keep exploring and staying connected. And so with that, I'm gonna thank you everybody, and I'm gonna give the closing slides to Ali.
In closing, as Val mentioned, we're almost done, I promise. All of our efforts aim to promote inclusivity and enhance the quality of life for people living with dementia. So we'll conclude by looking forward. Where do we need to go from here? First, we have to listen to the voices of passengers. We need step-by-step research to identify the actual needs of individuals living with dementia as they plan their journeys and navigate airports. We don't want to rely on assumptions, as Val mentioned. We really need that real information from real travelers. And we'll continue to engage with people living with dementia and their travel companions directly through surveys and interviews to understand their needs, challenges, and preferences when traveling. Second, we need to update and improve training and design. We need to take existing training approaches, designs, and processes and adapt them to respond to these needs that we learn. We don't necessarily need to start from scratch, but we can build on what's already there. But we really do need to modernize these accessibility services and programs and enhance them with dementia in mind. We, as a research team, are going to continue engaging with other countries so that we can understand the best practices and innovative approaches to improving accessibility in the travel industry. We really want to expand the airport study to include other sectors within the large air travel industry, like airlines, ground transportation, and travel agencies. Third, we need targeted awareness campaigns. As we mentioned a few times, it's really difficult to find this information when you're trying to prepare for travel. So we need these awareness campaigns about air travel preparation, about disclosure concerns, and these campaigns should be able to reach people living with dementia, their families, and care partners, meeting them where they are in formats that can be used and understood. And fourth, we need to measure what works. We need to regularly check how these programs and services are working and make sure that they can be maintained over time. This involves all stakeholders, that's passengers, families, airlines, airports, researchers, and advocacy organizations working together to assess what's working and what truly needs improvement. And we hope to provide guidance to people living with dementia and their travel partners on how to navigate this travel experience well. That would include having various resources, tools, and strategies for a smoother journey. And ultimately, our team plans to create simple, easy to use resources to help support people during air travel. And we'll, of course, gather feedback from people with lived experience of dementia so that we can adjust and improve these tools, making travel more comfortable and confident and accessible. And we wouldn't be researchers without sharing one of our current research studies. So we're currently doing a study at the University of Ottawa, and we're really looking to hear from people who have lived experience of dementia and air travel. And we really want to learn what travel was like for you, the good parts and the bad parts. So anything that you share with us will help make airports and airlines more dementia friendly, and it will also help other people understand what makes air travel easier and harder. So if this does sound interesting to you, you're welcome to scan the QR code on the screen. There will be another QR code on the next screen that has the same link. Or you can connect with either myself or Val after this presentation. There's absolutely no pressure to join. We just really want to hear real stories and experiences to help kind of push the needle forward and improve travel for everybody. And so as we wrap up today, we just want to leave you with this. Air travel and dementia is possible. It's happening every day, but it can be so much better than it currently is. For those of you who are living with dementia or supporting someone who is living with dementia, you have every right to travel, to maintain connections, to create memories, and to live fully. Don't let fear or lack of information hold you back. Plan carefully, ask for help, and know that you're not alone. For those of you who are working in the travel industry or in research, the dementia community is ready to partner with you to help create better systems. They're experts in their own experiences, and we need to listen to them. And for all of us, every conversation we have, every story we share, and every time we speak up, it contributes to creating a more accessible, understanding, and dementia-friendly world of travel. Thank you so much for your time and attention today, despite those technical difficulties at the beginning. We know we've covered a lot of information, and we hope that it's been useful. And I believe we have some time for some questions, but if you don't get to your question today, you're more than welcome to contact us over email. And so we'll finish off just by saying safe travels to everyone, and thank you again for being here.